Hello everyone, we are back in my Dunbrock Defense toy box for the final time today, and we're going to finish up the logic for my tower defense game. Now this episode is going to be a little different than my normal tutorials, because I won't be covering any new Creativitoys today. We've already learned about all the toys that make up the economy system, but I want to finish up the game that we've been building so that you will have a complete working example of a toy box economy system that you can reference and enjoy. Now this episode is kind of a sequel to episode 86, where I talked about how to structure a complex game that's divided into multiple rounds. And today's video will give you another example of that for a different kind of game. But this one does not use timers to divide up the game. This one uses a series of logic gates to divide it up. And what we have here is a game with 3 rounds, and in each round you place your defenses, and then you defend your territory from waves of enemies, and then you mop up by collecting the coins and rescuing as many townspeople as you can, throwing them into these wells or the sidekick tree doors. And I'm using 3 logic gates, which I had placed over here before, to determine which round the player faces next. When we're ready to start a new round, we open the logic gate for that round and close the other 2 logic gates. And so far, we have implemented round 1, which is controlled through this gate. We have yet to hook up round 2 and round 3, which is what we're going to do today. And I want to implement those 2 final rounds today. They work pretty much like the first round did. The only difference is that each round has a different number of places where the enemies are coming from. In round 1, they were only coming from this gate over here. In round 2, they're going to be coming from that gate and this gate. And in round 3, they're going to be coming from all 3 of those gates. And so that's the main difference. And then, of course, the kind of enemies that the player will face. They'll get increasingly stronger as we go. So what you're going to see today looks very much like what we've already done for round 1. Now, before we get started, I want to let you know that I have logic diagrams on my blog for this entire game, which we've been building for the past 9 or 10 episodes or whatever it is. But you may want to reference those diagrams as we go. Alright, so we have a couple of things we want to finish for round 1 first that I had forgotten to do previously. And then we're going to turn our attention to round 2 and round 3. So the first thing I want to do, we had hooked up or implemented the replayer for here to put the yellow arrow here, which we display at the start of the round. We need to do that for these other 2 places where the enemies can come from. So I've got 2 replayers here, and I've taken the playback interval to 0 on each one. Alright, so we have this one and the other one. Alright, so I'm going to pick up this little arrow, which is the same one we used last time. I put another one down here just so we could get back to that part of the editor. So just like we did for the previous replayer, we want to come over here, come out of the editor, step on the replayer to get the menu in the lower right. On my Wii U, I press B to start recording, then I step off so I can get back in the editor, and we want to place our arrow right here. And then I'll exit back out of the arrow, step on the replayer to get the menu in the lower right, press B to stop recording, and A to clear. And then we're going to do the same thing for the other replayer over here. We'll step on the replayer, start recording, step off, back in the editor, and the gate's there. The enemies are heading that way. step on the replayer, stop recording, clear. All right, so the replayers are now set up. And now we can move those out of the field of play. So we'll stick this one back over here, and I'll cover those Creativitoys back there in a moment. And we'll move this one out of the way. Alright, so at the end of round 1, as we're preparing for round 2, and the player is going to be purchasing new toys and placing them, we need to let the player know where the enemies are coming from for round 1 or for round 2. They're going to be coming from there and over there. And so the way we plug into that, we're going to do that through the counter. And this counter again goes off when all of the enemies for the wave have been defeated. And we can do that from here, or we can do that from this time delayer over here. And I think actually, well, let's just leave this the same as I had it before. I'm going to do it off of this counter, but I think you can do it off either one. So we're going to do a new logic connection. When the target is reached and the round is over, we're going to do a playback on that replayer. And on the counter, a new logic connection when the target is reached. We're going to do a playback over on this replayer, because for round 2 they're going to come from both locations. Okay, and there we go. So now we're ready for the next round with that. Now once this the enemies are defeated, we go into this kind of intermediate round where the player is picking up whatever residual coins are laying around and rescuing as many townspeople as they can. And when this time delayer goes off, as you saw at the end of the previous episode, this starts round 2. And so once this phase is over, the things I forgot to do last time, we're going to do a new logic connection on the delay completed. We want to turn off the radar markers for the townspeople and for the sidekick doors. So a new logic connection when the delay is completed, turn off that replayer. We also want to remove the townspeople. So we'll do a new logic connection when the delay is completed. We'll take the townspeople out. We'll defeat the wave, because we're going to regenerate that with all of the townspeople again. So the player has 3 of them to rescue, and not just whatever is left over from the previous round. Okay. And then there's also one other thing I wanted to do, and that is when the player throws a townsperson into the sidekick door, whether it's the well over there or one of those 2 trees, it gets routed through this logic gate, which gives them the coins and then resets those chests. And I also want to display a text message to let them know that they've successfully earned those coins, as if the sound effect isn't enough. So we're going to do a new logic connection on this gate on output. I want to come over to our text displayer over here. And under the defense category, we want to tell them friend delivered, extra loot awarded. Just want to reinforce the fact that they've gotten an award for doing that. All right, and that is everything now for round 1. Now, last time we had hooked up at the end of this, for this time delayer, that we would basically, trying to find my screen grab here, hold on a minute. When this time delayer goes off, we came over to our storefront, and we opened up the storefront for them. And when that closed, then we opened up the editor so they could place the new toys that they had purchased. And again, once the editor is closed, it tries to route into one of these 3 gates. Now we had closed this one when round 1 started, and when round 1 finished, the counter opened up this logic gate to get ready for that. And so now on this logic gate, we want to kick off round 2. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to do a new logic connection on output. We're going to come over to each of those replayers first of all and clear them, because now the stage is done where the player is placing traps and things, so they don't need those arrows anymore. So a new logic connection on output. Go over to the other replayer, and we'll clear that one. All right, and then we're going to display some text. So a new logic connection on output. We want to let them know that wave 2 is starting. So we'll come over to our text displayer. Under the defense category, we'll say wave 2. And then we want to kick off the enemy wave generators for the next wave, for round 2. And so what we have over here, these are the controls we had for wave 1. We've basically duplicated those same controls for wave number 2 and for wave number 3. And we've added a logic AND. This is something we did not need for the first wave because we only had the enemies coming from one location. But now we're going to have enemies coming over here. We have controls here for wave 2 and wave 3. And we have controls over here for wave 3 for the enemies that will be coming out of that portal. And so since we have 2 sources of enemies, we can't really finish the wave until both sources of enemies have been exhausted. And that's why we have the logic AND. And we only need 1 for each of wave 2 and 3, so I place those over here. All right. So for wave 2, we're going to hook up our wave generator to this same locator. And I've already configured the wave to save a little time. This one is going to use 2 pine bears and 2 oak bears. So getting a little bit more difficult now with the oak bears. Once again, under the properties, we need to take the generation delay to 0 and set the team to green. Okay. And we do the same thing over here for this wave generator. So we attach that locator, or that wave generator, to this locator. The wave is set the same way, 2 pine bears, 2 oak bears. The properties are going to be set the same way. Generation delay to 0, team, green team. Okay. And then these controls here are basically those controls, and the ones over here for wave 2 are basically going to work the same way that they did here for wave 1. So on this wave generator, well, actually let's do this. We'll come over to our logic gate over here for the start of round number 2, wave number 2. And we're going to do a new logic connection on output from that. We'll come over to each of the 2 wave generators and generate the wave. And we're going to start both of them at the same time. So a new logic connection on output from wave round number 2's gate. We'll start this one, generate that wave. All right. And the other thing we'll do is we'll put a fresh set of townspeople in here. So a new logic connection on output. Come over to our friendly wave generator and generate that wave. Okay. All right. Now again, these controls are going to work the same as these controls did. So on this wave generator, we're going to do a new logic connection when the wave is defeated. All right. We're going to come to our time delayer and start the delay. And once again, the default of 1 second on this is fine. On the time delayer, a new logic connection when the delay is completed. We will input into the logic gate. And on the logic gate, new logic connection on output. Generate another wave. And this is going to keep going until our counter goes off. On the enemy wave generator, new logic connection when the wave is defeated. We're going to come over to our counter and we will increment the counter by 1. And once again, the counter is set the same way the other one was. So a target count of 5, visible display off, and all of those are set the way they are. Okay. Now this counter, when this went off, started the townsperson collection thing here in between the rounds. But again, we have 2 counters. So what we're going to do is kick off this one. We're going to feed that into the logic and then the logic and will kick that off once both counters have reached their target. So on this counter, a new logic connection, when the target is reached, we input into the logic and. That's the main difference here between round 1 and round 2. All right. And the other thing we'll do off of the counter is a new logic connection. When the target is reached, we close the logic gate so that we don't keep generating enemies. All right. And then we do that exact same thing over here. So on new logic connection, when the wave is defeated over here, we start the timer. On the timer, new logic connection when the delay is completed, or not the timer, the time delayer. We input into the gate. On the gate, new logic connection on output. We generate a new wave. And on the enemy wave generator, new logic connection when the wave is defeated. Increment the timer, or the counter. Sorry, getting all these words mixed up. And on the counter, new logic connection when the target is reached. Close the logic gate. And on the counter, when the target is reached, input into the logic and. Okay. And then on the logic and, new logic connection, when that's complete and both sets of enemies have been defeated, we come and input into this logic gate to kick off this phase that we built last time, where the player collects the coins, collects as many townspeople as they can. And the other thing we do is a new logic connection. When complete, we want to open up the gate for the next wave. And I just remembered what I forgot was to close this gate. And so we can pick either one of the enemy wave generators. We'll pick this one just to keep the logic all over here. So a new logic connection when the wave is generated. So the first wave is generated. We'll come over and close the gate for wave number 2. Okay. And there you go. That is everything for wave number 2, or round number 2. So once we input into here, this turns on the radar markers for the sidekick doors and the townspeople, kicks off the timer. The player has 60 seconds to rescue as many as they can. When that's done, that inputs through these 2 time delayers and displays a couple of messages. And when this one goes off, it displays the storefront again. So the player can do some more shopping to spend the money they've earned. When that's done, it kicks off the editor, so they can place their toys, and when that's done, then it attempts to input into these 3 logic gates. This time, the gate for round number 3 is open. And this time, we have 3 different places where we're going to be having the enemies come from. So this time, as I mentioned before, it'll be coming from all 3 locations. And so this time, what we want to do on the logic and over here, so when we finish this wave, we want to do a new logic connection when complete. We want to do a playback on all 3 replayers, so they know where the enemies are coming from for the next round. So new logic connection when complete. We'll do a playback on that one. And a new logic connection when complete. Do a playback on this one. Alright, so once the editor is closed, and this gate receives its input signal, then we kick off round 3. So once again, the first thing we want to do is on output from this gate, we want to clear all 3 of these replayers. And you can see this is basically doing just what we did before. The only difference is now we have more places to do. So we have controls for that gate over there. We got controls for this gate over here. We got controls for the original gate. And basically we're doing the same thing every time. So if you wanted to add a 4th round and a 5th round, you can see how easy that would be to do. You're just duplicating the controls again. So now for wave 3, connect it up to the same locator. This time though, for this wave, we're making it a little more difficult. No pine bears now. We've got 2 oak bears and 2 swamp bears. Over at this gate, we've got the same thing. So we're going to connect this locator, or this wave generator for round number 3 to that same locator. And this wave is configured for round 3 with 2 oak bears, 2 swamp bears. And now we got them coming from another location. And so we're going to connect up this wave generator to our 3rd locator. This one we're going to do something a little bit different though. We're going to start the enemies coming out of those 2 gates first. And we're going to wait a little bit before the enemies start coming out of this one. We're going to set up a 20-second delay. So we're going to use this time delayer to do that. So on the properties, we'll set that one to be 20 seconds. And I'm just doing this just to show you how you can mix things up a little bit. And this wave generator is configured with 2 swamp bears and 2 mahogany bears. So this one's going to generate the toughest enemies we can generate. And because we have a 20-second delay here, rather than having 5 waves of those, we're just going to have 3. So I have the target count on this one set to 3. The target count on these other ones, on these other counters, are set the same way as the other waves. 5 on this one, and 5 over on this one. Oops. And once again, this is set to a 1-second delay. That's true over there and over there. Alright, so on our logic gate for round 3, in addition to clearing those replayers, we want to do a new logic connection on output. We want to kick off the enemy wave generator for round 3 over at this gate. And we want to kick off the enemy wave generator for round number 3 over at the second gate. So a new logic connection on output. Kick off the enemy wave generator over at this gate, or this portal. And then we want to kick off the time delayer for the third portal. So a new logic connection on output. Come over to our time delayer and start the delay. That's our 20-second delay. And when that's completed, then we'll generate the wave for the third portal. Okay? And once again, you connect these up the same way. So on this one, you're going to do a new logic connection. When that wave is defeated, we're going to start the 1-second time delayer. When that goes off, input into this gate. On output from that gate, generate another wave of enemies. On the enemy wave generator, when the wave is defeated, we also want to increment the timer by 1. And when that timer goes off, new logic connection when the target is reached. Close that logic gate and input into the logic AND. And on this enemy wave generator, we can go ahead and close. When the wave is generated, we can close the logic gate for round number 3. So hopefully you're picking up on the pattern here. And as I said, if you want to add additional rounds, it's pretty easy to do. So when this wave, is generated, no, cancel. New logic connection when the wave is defeated. Start that timer. Excuse me. When the timer, excuse me, time delayer is completed, input into the gate. New logic connection on output from the gate. Generate the next wave. On the enemy wave generator, new logic connection when the wave is defeated. Increment that timer, or that counter. On the counter, when the target is reached, we close the gate. New logic connection when the target is reached. Input into our logic AND. And over on this one, same thing. So on the wave generator, when the wave is defeated, start the time delayer. On the time delayer, new logic connection when the delay is completed. Input into the gate. On the gate, new logic connection on output. Defeat. No, generate the wave. I'm getting in a hurry. Sorry about that. So I'm going to edit this, change that to generate the wave. On the enemy wave generator, new logic connection when the wave is defeated. Increment the counter. And on the counter, new logic connection when the target is reached. Close this logic gate. And when the target is reached, input into the logic AND. All right. So now if you wanted to have a fourth and a fifth wave, then basically this one, this logic AND, is going to do the same thing as that logic AND. It's going to kick off this intermediate stage, and it's going to do the replayers, do the playback on the replayers, and so on. But for my game, the third round is the final round. So this time on the logic AND, it's going to do something a little bit different. There's really no need to kick off this phase for the final, at the end of the final round, because the player is done with the game, so it doesn't make any difference if they rescue townspeople or not, because they can't spend that money anyway. And because the game's over, there's no point. So that's why I did not have the logic gate for round number 3 generate the townspeople. I did not establish a connection to the friendly wave generator. So the only thing we have to do then, since we're at the end of the game, is on the logic AND for round 3, a new logic connection when complete. We're going to come over to our sound effect generator, and we'll play my standard end of mission sound. So under the musical category, we'll play the fanfare. And I also placed an action enforcer over here ahead of time, so we'll invoke that as well. So on the logic AND, a new logic connection on complete, we'll invoke our action enforcer, and we will have all the players celebrate. And we should probably play or display a text message as well. So on the logic AND, a new logic connection when complete. Come over to our text displayer, and we want to let the player know that they've been victorious and that the game is over. So under here, we're going to go to the defense category, and we're going to have it say you're victorious. Oh, and by the way, I don't think I connected up this last logic gate to the text displayer. Let's do that too. So on output from that, we'll go to the defense category, and I could just say wave 3, and I would want to do that if I'm going to create a 4th or a 5th wave, but since this is the last wave, I want to let the player know that. And so, let's see, where did I do that? Oh, there it is. Get ready for the final wave. Okay, and there we go. That is everything for the game. So hopefully you see the structure. You just divide up each of the phases of the game. So I've got 3 rounds, 3 sets of enemies, and in between each round we're displaying the storefront and letting them place their traps. And then within a round, they're battling enemies, and then they're rescuing townspeople. And then when that's done, we display the storefront and then display the editor. So you kind of divide things up, and you kind of group the controls together based on the phase or the sub-phase that you're working on. So we have round 1 controls. We've got the in-between activity between the rounds where they're rescuing townspeople. And then for round 2, it's more of the same. So we keep the controls the same. I kind of try to organize them the same just so I can remember how it all goes and just try to make it as same as possible. Again, you add new controls where you have to, like the logic and, but you reuse controls. So like for the in-between section of the game, you set this up so you can reuse it, and that makes your life easy. And so just being organized really, really helps. And then, as I said before, just use logic gates to kick off the rounds, and you only open the gate for the round you're interested in starting. And so that's how you can organize a game even as complex as this one and make it simple and easy to follow with the logic. Now at this point, everything is done, and you'll want to save your game and then push the button here and test it all out. And if there's any hiccups, you can go back and make corrections to the logic. So you'll exit out of your toy box like we've done in previous episodes, come back, make your changes, save it, test it again. If there's another problem, exit out, load the toy box back up, make any changes, and so on. Repeat that process until you're pretty satisfied with how it goes. And then what you'll do is exit out of the toy box one more time, come back in, and then move all of your creativity toys out of the way. So all the toys that are over here, put them in the little hollow that we created down here underneath the terrain to hide them. All of the toys that are out over here on this end, you can put in the hollow that we created under this island. Stick them under there to hide them. And then all the toys that are over on this end, both for this little peninsula and that peninsula, you can hide those underneath here and put those out of the way. Leave the button, I would recommend leaving all 3 of these buttons in case you need them. Because if you delete these buttons, again, you'll have no way then to ever edit this toy box again. So leave these buttons out here. But when you're all done, then come out, save the toy box for one final time, and you're ready to go. And with that, my tower defense game is done, and so is this toy box. Next time, we'll wrap up our discussion of the toy box economy system by talking about how you can use it to build a sim game like Dreamlight Valley inside Disney Infinity 3.0. I know many of you have been asking about that and are interested in that, and so that'll be the focus of my next episode. The next episode will also be my 100th episode of Toy Box Tutorials. So I'm going to do something special to celebrate that milestone next time too. Well, that's all for me today. Before you go, please like and subscribe for more toy boxes like this, and leave a comment to let me know what you think about this episode. And remember, I've also got logic diagrams on my blog for this entire tower defense game. You'll find the link for that in the video description. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.